Wednesday morning, afternoon actually. I missed Tuesday because we were recovering from the Memorial Day celebration. Kind of busy cleaning up. It's getting hotter in the afternoons. Just hot, muggy, lots of sun. Some of us, I actually suffered from heat exhaustion Tuesday, so that's mainly why I didn't have a video. Just from living in the city, not accustomed to being out in the sun nearly as much. But so we've chopped up one of these sassafras trees that has fallen down. Use a chainsaw, cut it into lengths, about like that. So from there to there, got a chain hooked up.
Whenever you hook to another chain, you don't hook
like
the hooks like that. Because you do, you jam them together and it's like they've been welded.
Okay.
So hook it like that.
Hook the chain on a link. Okay. So hook the chain on a link rather than on the two chains together like that. Don't do that. So we have a tractor, small tractor up there. Gonna pull it out. Also want to make sure to damage the the rest of the forest as little as possible. So we have this tree here, and that small tree there, and there as well. So we have a lane. We will go straight up there, just chop the vines and other things. So the vines will grow back, the roots are still in the ground. Plus there are tons of vines everywhere, but these trees we don't want to damage as much as possible. This is why man invented the chain. One of the reasons. So this is probably, oh, 9 maybe 9, 10 feet tall. Whoop, it fell off. And this is why people work together. Have one tractor doing the chain and another one moving the wood. All right, Wednesday evening. So we had a lot happen today. We realized a lot of us are really just kind of tired from the move. For me, I'm not feeling it as much because I was working full-time while everybody else was getting stuff moved. So I have not felt as much of the strain as they have. So it was a little slower today. And then we had rain for the second half of the day. So we were kind of getting the outdoor stuff done. And those garden beds take a lot of work. So it's been a surprisingly productive day for how tired we all have felt through most of the day, but several pick-me-ups throughout the day. One small one, we got the door of the chicken coop done with our grandfather's instruction on how to put these together. What we did was, these are 2x6s. Now keep in mind that lumber does not follow the actual name of it. So when you order a 2x6, it is actually 1 3/4 or 1.5 inches thick, and like 5.5 or 5 3/4 inch wide. Yeah, 5.5 inches wide. So we added it up, we did the math, and we found that we could make a square based on what we had, and then we did this in 2 layers. So you have one square, the netting, and then the other square on top. So the netting is nailed or stapled into one square, and then the other square is screwed together and then screwed into, actually it's not screwed together, it is screwed to the other board. So it took a bit of measuring. Measure twice, cut once, that's important. That really helped us get this. One issue we ran into was the buildings that we need this to go through. So let me show you there. So the hinges are on this side, and then it closes there. One thing we didn't do was measure that. So it's lower at the bottom and higher at the top. I want to see, oh, there was a woodpecker back there on that that little bird feeder there. But I couldn't turn around in time for you to see it, sorry. So what we did was we removed the, I'm not sure what it's called, but the joining strip that protects this joint here. So that gave us just enough room to make this fit in between like that. So it butts up against the stones there. So that way it has a backstop, because there are several things that will put strain on a hinge. One is overextending it, so it doesn't overextend on this side because it's flush here, and then doesn't overextend there because we arranged the cinder blocks so that it would it'll be flat but not overextended like that. So that's one way to prevent strain on a hinge. Another way to prevent strain on those hinges is to have the weight resting on something, because just the nature of physics, the weight out here away from the hinge is going to cause more strain than the weight close to the hinge. You can see this with your own body as like holding a small weight here as opposed to holding it out here. This you will tire much faster than if you're holding it right here. It's the same principle. We do have a rock set up down here at the base. This rock here, there we go. This rock here, if we stick a piece of wood in there, that both holds it open and keeps it, holds up the weight of the gate, so there's less strain on the hinge. Now there are 4 hinges with 6 screws each in this. Let me show you this here. So you've got, let's see, 1, 2, and then 3 and 4 down there. So it's a sturdy gate, probably weighs 20, 25 pounds. But we've got a good set of hinges and a good system, I think. It should last for a bit. We don't have anything for it to rest on down here. It doesn't really rest on these cinder blocks, but we'll figure that out. Also, for anyone who has chickens or maybe is thinking of having chickens, or if you're just interested in various random tidbits of information, a lot of the predators that go after chickens are willing to dig in order to get the chickens. So as I showed earlier in a previous episode, the gates, that's our compost pile. We'll get it cleaned up a little bit for the chicks. Well, the chicks aren't going to be here. They're not going to be mature for a couple of weeks. They should be arriving on Friday, so that should show up later in this episode. But yeah, so there's a skirting underneath the sod on the outside of the fence, a skirting of wire mesh, the same that we used for the fences there. There, yep. So, yeah, so there's that. But then, to prevent digging here, what we did was we have 4 sets of cinder blocks. So there's, let's see if you can see this here. There's this one here, which lays down flat. And then there's this one that stands upright, so that if something wants to get in through the holes in this, they will stop against this. We filled the holes here with dirt. We will probably ram some rebar through it to make sure that it doesn't shift too much. And then underneath this is also another layer of cinder blocks stacked like this. So above ground, below ground. So that should deter diggers, because the cinder blocks being like that tall or taller, actually more like that tall. That's a fair ways for something to dig. And if they choose to dig under that, they will have the weight of the cement, of the cinder block falling on them. Critters that are accustomed to digging know this. They know it instinctively, and they will know it. They might try. So they're probably not going to get hurt trying to get in. They'll quit before they do. And then there is another layer of cinder blocks just to provide some more weight as well as support for the gate and to hold up the other cinder blocks, otherwise they'd fall over. So that's one small accomplishment. Thursday afternoon, part of what makes our whole family's situation and way that we live different is our use of herbs for medicine. One common thing out here is ticks. Ticks are everywhere. If they are not eaten by their natural predators, they will latch onto you and suck your blood. There does appear to be a kind of not an urban myth, kind of a rural myth, that ticks drop from trees. They do drop from trees, but they also crawl through grass and hang off of bushes. They can survive for months without food. So they will just latch on to the end of a branch or twig or blade of grass or leaf and just hold their little pinchers out. And when any living thing walks by, they grab it. So I got gotten, and we have regular tick checks, but I missed one, and so I felt this itch about right here on my leg, and so I scratched it, and it itched more. So I came inside to look at it, and there was this. I didn't recognize it as a tick at the time. There were some little crusty bits, and I thought, well, maybe it's like a scab that formed or whatever, and then it started to kind of swell up a little bit. Kind of created a hard area around it, which is the body's reaction to an infection or toxin. That hardness is not like a solid thing. It's usually a buildup of fluid in the tissues. The body frequently will use inflammation as not an emergency response, but as a just part of the routine response. If the body is normally healthy and is acting properly, it will fill. Cells are kind of like a balloon. Normally they're kind of floppy, just filled with their normal stuff, but when they're inflamed, they will fill up and get kind of hard. So that's kind of what happened in the area around the bite. The bite being only about like that big. It was a small tick, and then the inflamed area is about that big, and then hard area is kind of like that. So what we did was, with ticks, there's the danger of Lyme disease. There is some evidence that indicates that the extract of stevia leaf is good for fighting off the initial stages of like the pre-infection stage of Lyme disease. I don't expect that I have Lyme disease. There are telltale signs of Lyme usually. I don't have any of those, but just to make absolutely sure, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. We put a drop of stevia leaf extract on the side of the, well, first what we did was I made sure to remove anything that was left of the tick. There was nothing left, but often if you remove a tick, if a tick does not leave of its own free will, its mouth parts will detach from its body and remain in you, and that can often be a site of secondary infection. So you want to make sure to get any of the mouth parts out of the wound, and then clean it. So I washed it with soap and water. Then the next thing was a drop of stevia leaf extract. Make sure that it is actually pure stevia leaf extract. It's an alcohol extract that gets most of the water-soluble components, which are the ones that you want. So it's an alcohol extract of stevia leaf. One drop, not dropper, but one drop goes on the wound, and then a few drops of an echinacea root extract. Now, echinacea is a little difficult because it is frequently wildcrafted, which means people go out and find it, and then, of course, it's the root, so you have to dig up and kill the plant. Well, the problem is that it became popular a few years ago, and people wildcrafted it almost to extinction in the United States. So avoid wildcrafted echinacea stuff. Either make it your own or get it from somebody who grows it their own. We made our own from stuff that we grew, so we're good there. But if you, again, that's an alcohol extraction for the water-soluble components of echinacea. Echinacea is a good disinfectant, antibacterial, antimicrobial, antiviral. So it's good for things like this shallow puncture wound, since that's what the tick's bite is. So a few drops of echinacea directly on the wound. I didn't open up the wound or anything, but because it's a wound, it's open, so just drip it on there. And then there's this herb called plantain. I'll show you a picture of it out here later in the episode. Take a large plantain leaf, and what you'll do, we don't do this in modern medicine, so this is going to sound strange, but you take it up and you chew it. It's called a spit poultice. This is an ancient practice. Probably avoid it if you have some sort of mouth infection, but other than that, the stuff that is in your mouth is what is in the rest of your body. Your body is fighting it or working with it all the time. It is not, unless you know that there's an issue with something in your mouth, it's fine. So you take the plantain leaf and you chew it up, not till it's like soupy, but just to break it up, because the ribs of the leaf contain tannins, which is the same compounds found in corks for wine bottles. It is an astringent, which means it gets the cells to expel water and to seal up, so it is fantastic for sealing wounds. At my previous place of employment, somebody there had a cut, a small cut. It was like that big. It was small, but I got them to put plantain on it, and in 15 minutes the person came back and said, "Hey, what was that plant?" Because the wound is stitched up now, and now it's not like Wolverine regenerative healing powers, like, "Oh, hey, I don't have a scratch anymore," but you know, still a scratch, but it closed the wound pretty well. So we've made sure that the wound is clean. It's not a deep puncture wound; it's a surface wound, so there isn't an issue of sealing up the wound and still having an air pocket inside. So clean the wound. Actually clean the wound multiple times, get a disinfectant in there, and then plantain on top to seal it. Now the wad of poultice is about that big, so I held it on there with a couple band-aids, just to keep it there and to absorb any extra juice off of the plantain after chewing it up. And then I have a bandana wrapped around it. So that is all under my pant leg. Also, one thing that I personally have found is that, at least for me, I'm not sure if this is true for everybody, I find that I can fight off just about anything if I drink a boatload of water. Water is known to be essential for healing and recovery. Your body uses it for pretty much every aspect of anything that you do. And the healing process as well is important. For water is important in that process, because your body will use the water in each of the individual cells as a way to remove dead cells, toxins, the bacteria that it's fighting off. It will flush all of that out using water and dump that into your digestive system to be processed. That's part of why you will find no human culture that is gross, but no human culture consumes feces, because it is not just leftovers from the food that you don't need. It is also all the toxins that your body is processing, all the microbes that your body is fighting off or flushing out. So that's why there's certain things that certain cultures eat and certain don't, and that's one that, no, to my knowledge, no human culture eats, because it's just not, it's not something that is fit for humans to even think about re-consuming. We're not rabbits. We don't chew the cud. We don't eat that stuff. So the body uses water to pull out the toxins, flush it into your digestive system, and then it uses water further in the digestive system to move that along. So the more water you have available for your body, the more likely, at least in my experience, this is where the scientific evidence kind of gives way, and then I fill in with my own personal experience. So I can't say that this would work for everybody, but it works for me. If I basically keep myself full of water, I drink water until I can't stand it, I will probably pass it in the next 15 to 30 minutes, and then I fill up again. Just keep that going. I found that I've kicked basically, after I figured that out, I have kicked every infection. If I do that dutifully, then I can kick the infection in a day. So hopefully this will help. I think I'm probably fighting off something as well, because I have a couple swollen lymph glands. I don't usually get them in my legs, but I do have them there. So it's understandable because this has been a massive physical change for me. I have lived in the city my entire life. There's an entirely different set of toxins and environmental stressors and microbiological profile in the city as opposed to here in the country, definitely a rural area, as well as more physical activity than I have probably ever done in a single week. So this makes sense, but it's still something that I need to, the body is a tool, and as a servant of Yahweh, as a steward of His creation, my body is part of His creation, so it is my responsibility and privilege to care for the tool that He has entrusted to my care, and part of that is drinking a ridiculous amount of water. One thing that I found helps with the water is that I put some sea salt and apple cider vinegar in it. I found that, again, personal experience, if I just drink straight up water, like filtered or distilled water, I can drink gallons of it and I will still feel horribly dehydrated. But if I put in Celtic sea salt and raw apple cider vinegar, just straight up apple cider vinegar in the water, then normally I'll consume between a half gallon and a whole gallon of water per day, and I feel great, and it doesn't get boring. It's not like, oh, water again. It's got a good taste. So for me, the proportions end up being about, for a half gallon of water, end up being about a teaspoon and a half of, I mostly eyeball it, but maybe like a half tablespoon of salt and 2 to 3 tablespoons of vinegar. I think I've done a quarter cup of vinegar, but that's quite a bit. But that helps. Scientifically speaking, water acts as a sponge. The molecule is structured in such a way that it can fit. I don't know what the term is, but it bonds with the molecules around it. So if the body is healthy and the water is already full of minerals, it will only pick up the toxins that are that it travels through in your digestive system. But if you are just drinking water that has no minerals in it, it will pick up the heavier stuff first, which is usually minerals, especially if it's water you ingest. If you're drinking it, it goes to your digestive system. It will pick up all the minerals in your digestive system, the minerals and things like magnesium and calcium and iron and potassium that your body works all of those together for your health and hydration. Your body uses magnesium and a couple others of those to properly process water. So it kind of works the other way if you don't have minerals in your water. So for the past couple of years, I've made sure to always have minerals in the water when I drink it. And when I don't have minerals in the water when I drink it, I feel it. So I'm going to be drinking a whole lot of that over the next day or so, and we'll see how I'm feeling tomorrow. Friday afternoon, a lot happened today. The first thing is we got our chicks. We got the baby hens. They are unsexed, just like the Keats that we got earlier. So these, we don't know how many males, how many females. We ordered 30. They sent us 27, and 2 were dead on delivery, like I mentioned with the episode with the Keats. That's not uncommon if you get animals shipped, especially small, young birds. They're very fragile, very sensitive, so it's not uncommon for there to be some that die on the way. I had read that Keats and chicks develop very differently, and that is very true. The Keats, let me see if we can see in here. It's kind of dirty. I need to change stuff out here. Where are they? There's some. Oh, I hear one. He's. Oh well. We really need to clean that out. Usually we need to clean right now because the Keats are just growing so fast. You can really tell they're already growing out their their wing feathers, their pinions, I think is the term. I may be wrong on that, so don't quote me on that. But yeah, they're really growing out their wing feathers and becoming more confident. They're still skittish. Guinea fowl are just always skittish. But they are eating an insane amount of food. And of course that means that we need to, they bring it in and then they put it out. So we need to change it right now multiple times a day. I'm really looking forward to getting them out of that box because it's not ideal. It's the best we can do for them right now, but we are really looking forward to getting them out. We should have the replacement Keats shipping on Monday, so sometime next week we'll have to do this whole process over again. But hopefully we won't have to do that anymore because they will, when they grow up, they will mate and lay their own eggs and hatch their own Keats, so we won't have to do this. So that'll be nice. But the chicks are, oh, here he is. Here he is. There's one. Hi, little guy. One thing is, the chicks do not nearly freak out as he doesn't really want to be touched, but they don't freak out by me trying to touch them. The Keats, if I try to touch them, they start cheeping like crazy and running around in circles. But chickens are just a different animal. They really are. But yeah, so we have 3 different types. I know we have Australorp, and I don't remember what the other 2 are. A few things that we really wanted to get with these chicks was we wanted to make sure that the chickens, oh yeah, the sun's right there in my face. We wanted to make sure that the chickens were dual purpose. We didn't want to get ones that were bred specifically for egg production or specifically for meat, because those tend to be newer breeds and their genetic variation is not as established and the gene pool is smaller. They tend to be weaker and more susceptible to disease. The older breeds we found are better for our purposes. Older in general. There are some newer ones that are still good, but we're looking for dual purpose birds. And also they need to be both cold hardy and heat tolerant. There aren't too many breeds that are both because being in southern Indiana, not way south, but central southern Indiana, it gets up to 90, sometimes 100 degrees, maybe a couple days out of the year in summer, and then we have had winters as low as -20, with a wind chill of like even more. But that's, that doesn't happen every year. But pretty much every year we can count on at least one 100-degree day and probably at least one day that gets sub-zero. So the chickens need to be able to handle both of those, and the 3 breeds that we got, the 3 breeds of chicken that we got are good for those. They're well-established breeds. They've had years or decades of people testing them, if not centuries. I don't know how old the Australorp is. That might be newer. But yeah, so we got those. These are the beds that we've been digging. That was another big accomplishment for us. This is a total of 3 of those the grocery row gardening style beds that I talked about earlier. And then these, this is another aspect that we pulled from kind of permaculture principles and grocery row gardening. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sort of raised beds where we dig out the path. There we go. Dig out the path and pile it up, and then flatten the top so we can plant it. Great thing about these, even though it's a lot of physical labor, is once we have these dug, we don't have to redo them every time, which is fantastic. Love that. So since we plan to be here for a long time, this is years worth of work that we're doing right now. We do this and we won't have to do it. Hopefully, if everything goes well, we won't have to do it for a very long time. This is the last of the beds that we've got going right now. This is number 10, and then we're going to put a 10 or 12-foot grass strip. Just leave that there so that we can get any equipment back there, like a log splitter or a tractor or a riding mower back there, because all those woods are ours, and it'd be nice to be able to drag a log through here or cut that grass. We may end up turning that into a hay field. We'll see. We've also planted a lot of these beds. These are the beans. So 2 different types of doing beans, just experimenting. Those are the TP style, and then this we just have kind of a fence sort of thing. This is just twine and then sticks out of the woods. So we'll see. The pole beans should do well on either of those. We'll see which one does better, and then just learn as we go. So we're doing that. We have radishes planted. I think we have some lettuce. But I'm not sure. Lettuce usually does better in less sun. This gets full sun all day, which is great. That's why we chose this spot. We also are planting potatoes. So if you're planting a large field, usually people will use seed potatoes. We just bought a regular 10-pound bag of russet potatoes from the grocery store, and then you prepare them. I don't remember what the term is, but you prepare them for planting, basically to get them to start converting from the starch in the potato to the roots. So this will start shriveling and getting smaller, and then these start getting bigger. We left them out for several days out on the picnic table under the tree, so they got several hours of sun a day. They got rained on, so basically it tricks the potato out of its dormancy, which is how you would normally store it, a cool, dry place, because those are not good growing conditions. But you get it hot, you get it cold, you get it wet for several days, and the potato thinks that it's time to grow. So it starts doing that, and that's when you plant them. You cut them up, make sure that you have at least one of these, because these are the roots. One of these is going to, actually I don't remember which one. It needs to put up greens for photosynthesis, and then it will also use at least one of these to burrow further into the ground and grow more potatoes as a fuel storage. I just realized you probably can't see me here. Oh yeah, wow. Sorry about that. But yeah, so they will do that. It's usually a fall harvest, which is great because being high in starch and carbohydrates, potatoes are a good winter food, and they keep well. Yahweh is amazing. In His providence, He has arranged food that harvests in time for when you need it. It's just, it's amazing. So that is something else we did. We are also preparing for a celebration that our family does. Between the age of 13 and 14, for each of my siblings, we commemorate their beginning of transition into adulthood. America seems to have kind of a conflicted idea of adulthood, and it's understandable. But for us as Christians reading the scriptures, following Yahweh, there does seem to be a distinction between the period when a human being is getting themselves established, and there becomes this fairly quick transition from that to it is time to begin taking on the responsibilities that you will carry out through the rest of your life. And if one does not have a solid grounding in what one already believes to be the end goal of one's life, then I can see how it would be difficult to figure out what is that transition, what is a child, what is an adult, how do I know that I'm an adult? For us, we see adulthood more as as the next level of responsibility rather than a state of being. So for us, it is not a matter of, oh well, you're 12 years and 360 days old, so you don't have any responsibilities, we're not going to teach you anything. And then, oh, you're 13 years old, you now have all these responsibilities, you got to know how to act like an adult, just instinctually, innately, you got to do it perfectly. We do not believe that at all. The same principles of following Yahweh apply whether you are 5 years old, or 55, or 105. the Bible does not say anything about some sort of difference in identity between someone who is not physically mature and someone who is. There is a constant state of growth. So I guess the closest example I could give, or parallel I could give, would be kind of like if you take on a higher position of responsibility at your place of employment. It's not like somebody walks up to you and says, oh hey, by the way, you've been promoted to manager. You now have to know everything about being a manager and do all of the manager responsibilities all at once. Do it now, no excuses. If somebody did that, I'm sure there are people who do that, but if somebody did that, you'd say, well, that's a bad boss. Well, what's a good boss? Well, a good boss would say, hey, it's time for you to move on up. In order for you to continue to be valuable to this company, we want to move you up. We will give you the training, we'll give you the resources. You've come to trust me through the way that our company operates and through personal and professional behavior, and the same principles apply. It's a greater level of responsibility, but I will be there, I will help you, I will guide you. I understand that there are going to be failures. I understand that there are going to be things that you will be constantly learning. There are things you will struggle with, and you will always struggle with these things, but I will help you, and there is a group of people who is there to help make the transition and continue the transition. And especially, we understand that it is a state of constant growth and change and learning. As sinful human beings in a fallen, sinful, broken world which we have corrupted and severed from a union with Yahweh, perfection is not going to be attainable here, and we understand that. So, to sum it all up, our commemoration of this event actually for two of my siblings, and we do it for both the males and females in our household. It's a small ceremony, but we have done it so far for every one of us who have reached that age, about between 13 and 14. What we do is to gather a very close circle of, well, for the entire immediate family, so we all participate, and a couple key figures for that individual that are an example of, who are instrumental in that person's life. So a couple of our older relatives who have been instrumental in the instruction of these young men, and have raised their own young men. They are good Christian individuals, and they are mature, and they have shown themselves worthy of respect. Those people will also be invited to this short ceremony and celebration. The purpose being to acknowledge this small community acknowledges that these individuals are ready not to immediately have it all together, but these two individuals have shown themselves to be ready and willing to take on the larger responsibility of maturing. That is the goal. We've never really had a set ceremony for it other than those things that I just talked about, and like I said, it's a constant learning process. So each time it has changed a little bit. Each time our motivations have changed a little bit, changed and refined and gotten more clear, more understood, and but at the same time more loose. It's just kind of, they're the things that matter, there are these principles that we will uphold, that we hold to for this celebration, for this commemoration. But as far as the actual logistics, like, oh, what exactly are we going to do? Who exactly is going to be there? The people who are important to us, most important to us for this. I'm standing by the edge of the woods and there's something rustling, but it's small, so we're good. The people who are most important to this aspect of the process that these individuals are about to embark on, this process that will take them the rest of their life, this process that we call growing up, that we all are in the process of, that none of us ever fully complete, but it is absolutely essential that we take that journey, because it is the heart that matters. The state of your heart will direct the journey. So for us, the goal is to guide the heart of each of these individuals, ourselves and each other, toward a communion with Yahweh as described in the scriptures. That principle guides our journey from birth to death. That is what we believe is the essence of the Christian walk. Not do this, don't do that, be with these people, go these places, avoid these people and places. Christ said, the greatest command in the law is to love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and mind and strength. And he continued answering the question. He said, the second greatest command is like the first. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. And he finished by saying, all the law and the prophets hang on these two commands. The law and the prophets was a phrase at the time that they used to refer to the entire Old Testament, which would have been the entirety of the scriptures they had at that point. They called it the law and the prophets because there was the 5 books of the law. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy are the names that we have given to those books. Those were not their original names given to them by the Hebrews, but that's the books of the law. And then most of the writings involved prophetic writings, so they lumped them all together, the law and the prophets. So when Christ said, those 2 commands and all the law and the prophets hang on these 2 commands, the entire Old Testament can be summed up and hangs on those principles. Love Yahweh with everything that you have and everything that you are, and love your neighbor as yourself. We can talk about what exactly that means and how that looks later. That'll probably come up at some point, because it is not just important but crucial to why we do what we do, how we determine what we should do, what we do, how we do it, when, all of those, the 6 important questions: who, what, when, where, why, how. Those 2 commands for us, gotta adjust the phone here. Those 2 commands for us are the foundation, the baseline for everything else. So the transition from childhood to adulthood is simply a transition from one state of living by that to the next state of living by those principles. The principles do not change. And I think that's what confuses a lot of people about being an adult, being a man, being a woman, being a whatever. They have this idea that, oh, suddenly the rules change. Suddenly the principles change. A lot does change, but the principles for us do not. There are no absolute standards that the child will be held to as a child that he is not held to as an adult. And there are no absolute standards that the adult will be held to that he was not held to as a child. The rules don't change. The practical application of the rules do change. Just like in a place of employment, if you take on a position of higher responsibility, the same principles apply. Treat your coworkers with enough respect to keep the business running. Don't embezzle your employer. Show up on time. And you get paid a certain amount. Do your job, do what you're told, when you're told to do it, the way you're told to do it. The principle applies whether you are a part-time stock boy or the CEO of a multinational organization. Same principles apply. It's the same thing. It works in business. It works in all of life because Yahweh has created all that has been created. So, the heart guides the journey. Where you end up at the end of that journey and who you are at the end of that journey is determined by the state of your heart. And for us, Christ, the goal is that Christ guides our heart. The Bible says the heart of man is desperately wicked. Who can understand it? We believe that. We don't necessarily, we do not put as much of an emphasis on understanding what makes people do these things. The Bible says there is no explanation. We believe that Christ is not only the only hope, he is all the hope. All hope. All hope that we need, all the hope we could ever want. Every solution is found in him, including the transition from childhood to adulthood. So all of that we will commemorate here tonight. Saturday afternoon, still a lot happening. Getting adjusted to the schedule of just working with the weather, doing some research on how people before the Industrial Revolution would have adjusted to getting a lot of physical work done outside while still, while not killing themselves. And hold on, that looks kind of overexposed. Well, it's overexposed because my phone camera isn't fantastic and it is absolutely midday. The sun is straight up. So that's why it's a little blown out here. Let me see if I can maybe, no, that's all right. So we got another garden bed done. So that makes a total of 10 garden beds, 3 of the layered version and 7 of the berm and swale sort of version. We're leaving a 10-foot grass strip here so that we can get through to the woods and the field there. So wood chopping equipment, tractor, riding mower and such. And then we're going to continue garden beds on the other side. The bucket marks the edge of the beginning of another path there. I've read that in the medieval era, often the peasants would handle the blazing sun by taking a white linen cloth. Now this is not linen, this is just cheesecloth, but what you would do is you would wrap it around the top of the head and the forehead and get it wet. You get it wet, wring it out and put it on your head. I've tried that and it's amazing. So have it, well actually right now I'm not working out here, so right now I just have it tied up here so it keeps the hair out of my face. I have like a hair tie or whatever, but that kind of breaks my hair and it also gets in the way and then it just frizzy. So but this is actually more reliable and it also covers my forehead, which it'll absorb sweat and prevent sunburn, and it keeps the top of my head cool because the white color of the cloth doesn't absorb heat. So yeah, when I was working out here I had it wet, just not like soaking wet, get it wet and then wring it out really well so it's still damp. with cold water, and then let it hang down the back here. Put my hair up underneath this, and let the cloth hang over the back of my head. The cold water evaporates, cools the blood in the head because the blood is very close to the scalp, which then circulates to the rest of the body and helps keep your body temperature cool. Also, taking a break, a multiple-hour break during the middle of the day when the sun is hottest, and then working later in the evening. So basically you're doing your work in 2 shifts, one in the morning before midday, and another one after it has started to set. So like anywhere between 11 and 3. We stopped for lunch at about 11:30, and I'm not sure what time it is now. Maybe like 12:30, 1. It might even be as late as 1:30 or 2. I don't know. I kind of lose track of time out here. Track it more by the sun than by actual time. But yeah, so we've got all that. We're going to dig some more tomorrow. I might do some later this evening. But yeah, so we did that, and we got our chickens. I did mention that earlier. They are out and more comfortable right now. There's them. So this might be a bit longer stretch of the video. I mean, I've had some longer ones, but this one won't be that long. But wanted to show how we take care of these. So as you can see, their bedding is quite dirty. They are growing really well. We got them several days older than when we got the Keats. So they are at a later stage of their development. They're already trying to fly. They almost flew out of this container, so we put this over them. Prey birds, things that aren't hunters, the babies are instinctively afraid of things that are over them, like stuff that is over their head. So it took them several minutes to get accustomed to this. I'm not sure why that one guy's making noise. He might be scared of me. I haven't spent too much time around them. But they've already gone through their feed. Their water's okay. Again, we put large rocks in the water so that they don't splash in it and they don't fall in it, because that leaches their body temperature and it can kill them because they're so small. It's hard for them to maintain their body temperature. We did get new brooders. So instead of having the one heat lamp, we have 3 of these brooder plates. So it positions at an angle. It's just a heated plastic thing. I would imagine it seems to be a very heat-resistant plastic, so it's not going to melt or anything. But there's a heat lamp. It's off right now. I think we turned it on during the night because it got a little colder. But yeah, so they can all fit in there. We have about 15 in here and about 15 in the other. So what we're going to do here, I actually don't have a way to set this up, set up the phone so you can actually see what I'm doing. But what we have is a feed for the Keats. They've also gone through their stuff, and they're getting quite large. So they're eating a lot of food. So that's for the Keats, and that's for the chicks. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a handful. No precise measurement, just put a handful in there, and then a handful of play sand, which is this here. There you go. So this is really fine. I'd actually gotten this for building a forge, like insulating material for a forge, but I moved on from that method. I still want to build a forge. I've built multiples, but I currently have one that's different. So yeah, so just a handful of sand. They are more likely to pick at the sand. It's good for their crop because they don't have digestive acid the way that we. I mean, they have a digestive acid, but their digestion doesn't work the same way as ours. So they need grit in their crop. Sunday, good day off. Went to church, spent the day with family. Bible talks about the Sabbath quite a bit through the Old Testament, but there is some debate in the Christian church as to the function of the Sabbath for the Christian, now that we live under the new covenant in Christ. What parts of the Old Testament traditions carry through, and what parts were simply symbolic placeholders for the function of Christ. I believe that if you look at what the New Testament talks about, there is a place where, I believe it's the Apostle Paul in one of his letters, talks about Christ being our Sabbath rest. So I do not believe that one day in 7 is a mandatory cessation of physical labor for the Christian, but instead that the 7th day, being a holy day of rest, was a way of, it was a placeholder for the eternal rest that we will have through Jesus Christ. It was a reference point, basically saying, hey, Yahweh gives his people rest. And now that we have Christ, Christ is our rest, and we have that rest whether we are physically resting or not. However, today was a good day to rest, and the weather still is, even in the evening, very comfortable, and we met much of our family in this area, which is very pleasant and encouraging. The chicks that we got on Friday evening are still doing well. We haven't had any casualties. They're a few days older than the Keats were when we got them, so they're already trying to fly. As I showed you previously, we have them covered up, and they're actually getting big enough that we needed to put them in separate containers. We had 2 containers with like, I think we had 10 in one and 15 in another, but they're big enough that we split them up. So now there's 8, and 9, I believe. That was on the advice of one of our neighbors in the area who has had chickens before, so they said, hey, you want to separate them. We are beginning to meet some of our neighbors. One of them, one neighbor in particular, also is Christian, has a large family, homeschooled. This is fantastic. They seem to be, just from one meeting with them, it looks like they will be, we're looking forward to them being like-minded individuals and getting to know them better and share resources and share encouragement. There's definitely a benefit to hearing alternate or opposing views to one's own views. It definitely keeps you on your toes, but there's also the Bible has a lot to say about the encouragement within the body of Christ, like-minded believers, and we are more than pleased to find believers like that in the area, really just down the road. I will need to look at getting some new work attire. I have a linen undershirt that I've been wearing for working out in the field, but it's a little too short, so gotten some, well, you can't really see here, it's kind of tanning right now, plus it's in the shade, but I got some major sunburn yesterday, so I'll need to get something that can cover up there. I like linen. It's not cheap like a cotton t-shirt, but it does so much better. It is worth, for me, it is worth the money. I think I can get a linen under tunic for $30–40, which is significantly more than what you would pay for a cheap cotton t-shirt. However, it will last a whole lot longer, and linen has, because of its structure, linen, which is made from flax, has a unique ability to, it can be spun light, so it is lightweight and hangs loose and is very breathable. It absorbs your sweat and then evaporates it into the air, unlike cotton, which kind of absorbs your sweat and then it sticks, or and also doesn't really let air in very much. It's better than cotton and much older. People have been spinning flax into linen since, Well, the Egyptians were doing it like 3,000 years ago, so it is an ancient technology that is still relevant in the modern world and works better than a lot of other materials that I found. So I should be getting those. We did get, I think maybe I showed it in the video yesterday. We got 2 more broad forks on yesterday. So that's fun, that's exciting. We're developing a method for using those so that we can get stuff done in 2 or 3 times as quickly and get more people involved, which would be fantastic. So looking forward to doing more work next week in Christ. This is the opportunity that we have for managing our labor. We can, because we hold the same hope and the same standards and we're on the same path. We are looking to the same end goal. We have the same standards of how to get there, and we have the same understanding as a family unit of where we are, who we ought to be, and how to get there, and how to do it while we're getting there. And that in Christ creates a harmony. I won't say it's perfect, because sometimes we want something different than that shared goal. I know from myself that I struggle with the desire to control myself, my surroundings, the people around me. That is not part of living in accordance with Christ, and that causes strife. But when I am living in harmony with Christ, I then live in harmony with the people around me who are also living in harmony with Christ. So that allows this labor management to work. We rest, and then we work, and we can work our tail ends off because we find good in that as well. We can work hard, we can play hard, we can rest hard, and then we can get back to it. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm very grateful for this day of rest, not because it is mandated, but because the opportunity has showed itself. It is from Yahweh's hand, and I appreciate that. And we'll get back to work in the morning.